The most wanted thing in the world today is Iran's 408 kilograms of enriched uranium. But where is it? Trump and his butter squad are not going to tolerate anyone rotating their obliterate rate in the slightest. Israel fought the war for 12 days at a daily cost of $750 million. The first Zionist, PM Ben-Gurion, used to say that old Palestinians will die and children will forget that they ever lived in Palestine. The 12-day war cost Iran $35 billion in losses. Can Israel apply the Lebanon model to Iran? According to the United States. Hello friends, it's Shan here. It seems that the more an idea requires clarification, the more uncertain it becomes. When something is repeatedly elaborated upon to make it comprehensible, with various justifications offered, it tends to lose its inherent weight and persuasive power. It begins to rely on external support to gain credibility. This very predicament appears to be confronting both Presidents Donald Trump and Israel at present, ever since the night of June 22nd, when the United States executed Operation Midnight Hammer against Iran, targeting 3 of its nuclear facilities. America has been striving to convince the global community that it has successfully dismantled Iran's nuclear ambitions. As evidence, they present 6 distinct impact sites at the Fordow nuclear enrichment facilities, which are considered among the most secure of Iran's nuclear installations. These consist of 6 satellite images showing 6 perforations in the mountainous terrain. Additionally, the U.S. has released aerial photographs of the Isfahan and Natanz enrichment plants taken after the bombardment, aiming to demonstrate the precision and exclusivity with which these sites were targeted. The message is clear. Observe the exactitude of our strikes. There is, by now, no question that the Pentagon aimed for and achieved a top-tier objective, demonstrating their capability. However, during a Pentagon briefing, when both American and international journalists inquired about the extent of the damage to Iran's nuclear capabilities, specifically whether the Fordow, Natanz, and Isfahan nuclear sites had been completely neutralized or if any operational capacity remained, whether the 18,000 centrifuges at Natanz and Fordow had been reduced to rubble, and what became of the much-discussed 408 kilograms of enriched uranium, which had been presented as sufficient for Iran to produce 6 to 10 nuclear bombs within a few months. President Donald Trump, his Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, known for his Crusades tattoo, and their entire butter squad offered no substantive answers. Their sole refrain was obliterated, obliterate, signifying a complete annihilation of the targets. Fordow, they insisted, was utterly obliterated. They were unwilling to provide any further specifics. Conversely, General Don Kane, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, who also has a background as a venture capitalist, stood alongside the Secretary of Defense, but conspicuously avoided the term obliterate. Instead, his chosen words for the press were severe damage and destruction, implying significant harm had been inflicted. General Kane then stated that a thorough damage assessment would be conducted by a separate department, with a report to follow. This report, he explained, would determine the precise extent of damage to each Iranian nuclear site and what remained operational. Intriguingly, at that very moment, the American Defense Intelligence Agency, DIA, had already compiled a preliminary assessment report. Even more remarkably, just 2 days later, on June 24th, CNN published this very report. It constituted explosive breaking news because this preliminary assessment directly contradicted the assertions made by President Donald Trump, the Secretary of Defense, and even the chairman of the Joint Chiefs. The report explicitly stated that the strikes on Iranian nuclear sites had not achieved full success, failing to destroy the core components. According to this initial DIA report, Iran could recover from the damage inflicted by these strikes within a few months, essentially returning to its pre-Operation Midnight Hammer status. This report not only caused a global uproar, but also significantly embarrassed us political and military leadership. Firstly, it was humiliating that such a report had leaked from within the Pentagon itself. Secondly, its findings were diametrically opposed to the attackers' claims of complete obliteration. Even before this report became public, Iranian officials had asserted that they had already relocated critical elements from all 3 nuclear facilities, Fordow, Isfahan, and Natanz, and therefore suffered no substantial damage from the American assaults. Iranians also claimed to have moved nuclear fissile material. These 2 conflicting narratives quickly became the focal point of global attention. How could President Trump and his butter squad tolerate even the slightest questioning of their obliteration claims? Their anger was palpable. Donald Trump publicly denounced American news organizations like CNN, NBC, and the New York Times as fake news, labeling them losers and claiming they had lost all viewership. He further accused them of being enemies of American military success. Yet, through all this, he again failed to answer the fundamental question. What became of the enriched uranium they had intended to destroy? Had it truly vanished from the face of the earth, or did it remain intact? What evidence existed for the destruction of other sites involved in the development of Iran's nuclear program components? Instead of providing direct answers, another press conference was swiftly convened at the Pentagon. During this briefing, General Kane and the Defense Secretary presented what they termed a special video event as evidence, offering international journalists a modern-style presentation. The Pentagon, being the world's most formidable military organization with a budget surpassing that of many nations' entire defense expenditures, was undoubtedly expected to deliver a truly insightful and accurate portrayal. It's difficult to imagine the Pentagon conducting a presentation without high expectations. However, when their exclusive video was finally played, it left everyone profoundly disappointed. These videos failed to offer any direct, conclusive evidence. In fact, a more compelling presentation with stronger evidence had previously been given by Pakistan's Air Vice Marshal Aurangzeb, who had at least provided the world with technical proof of how Pakistan locked onto and shot down 6 Indian fighter jets. The supposed proof presented by the Pentagon for the operation that devastated Iranian sites was merely an old test video. It depicted B-2 jets deploying a GBU-57 bunker buster. This was not an explanatory or technical video presentation specific to the attack on Iran. Its purpose was solely to demonstrate that the bunker buster could explode within a cave 10 to 15 feet thick with precise timing. It illustrated the bomb's ability to penetrate rocky surfaces and, crucially, to be detonated at a chosen underground depth in less than a second. This was the extent of the video's demonstration. This video only served to generate more confusion. Fordow's bunker was assessed to be 500 meters beneath the rock, with some conservative estimates placing it at 300 meters. Yet, the GBU-57's specifications indicate a penetration capability of up to 60 meters. The video, conspicuously, showed a roof significantly less than 10 meters thick being penetrated by the bunker buster. Another significant flaw in the video was that after the bunker buster exploded and the dust settled, the tunnel where the GBU-57 detonated was left with only a pile of rubble. The surprising aspect was that the cave's walls and roof remained intact, appearing as they did before the blast. While it's logical that mountain-embedded walls wouldn't simply collapse outwards, they should have sustained internal damage. Furthermore, the roof, barely 5 meters thick, somehow remained undamaged. Considering this is the world's heaviest bunker buster, it should have, at the very least, torn apart that roof. The video merely showed the initial impact of the bunker buster's entry. It failed to provide any clarity on the extent of damage sustained several hundred meters below, leaving that crucial question unanswered. Nevertheless, it is undeniable that some damage must have occurred at the Fordow nuclear facility. If the bunker buster had successfully penetrated to the required depth of the enrichment plant, it would have undoubtedly destroyed everything. But the critical question remains: did it achieve that depth? The video failed to substantiate this. Leaving Fordow aside, the Natanz and Isfahan plants must have suffered considerable damage, given that a significant portion of their components are situated above ground. The question of whether all 11,000 centrifuges in the underground Natanz plant, known to the IAEA, were destroyed, remained unanswered. Neither the bunker buster test video nor the second press conference held within 3 days on June 26 offered satisfactory answers to these pressing inquiries. Friends, setting aside these press conferences and official statements for a moment, let's conduct our own assessment using open sources, the information readily available to us online. We aim to understand the true extent to which the Iranian nuclear program has been set back by these attacks, and whether Iran can recover swiftly or if it will take years. Because, regardless, Iran is compelled to recover. After these attacks, it is imperative for Iran to achieve a significant deterrent, and that can only be an atomic capability. We observe that the most substantial loss Iran incurred in the 12-day conflict was the demise of its 14 most skilled nuclear scientists. However, was Iran's scientific talent limited to just these 14 individuals? Absolutely not. This endeavor involves thousands of scientists, including hundreds of highly qualified experts capable of replacing those lost. We witnessed that even after Mohsen Fakhrizadeh, often regarded as the father of Iran's nuclear program, was killed by Israel in 2020, the program continued unabated. Numerous other Iranian scientists have also been abducted, killed, or injured. Yet, Iran's nuclear ambitions persisted. Therefore, the loss of 14 scientists, while tragic, is not a setback that would push Iran's nuclear program back by decades. The second point is Iran's ownership of 2 uranium mines, ensuring it faces no shortage of natural uranium. The crucial question, however, is whether Iran now possesses the facilities to convert this natural uranium into its gaseous form, uranium hexafluoride, as raw uranium is unusable in centrifuges. This conversion is vital because the gaseous form is necessary for uranium enrichment in centrifuges. According to reports, the only such facility in Isfahan, located above ground, was completely destroyed. Rebuilding it would require substantial funds and expertise, and years of effort, all under intense international scrutiny. This, undeniably, represents a significant loss for Iran. The third crucial question, if Iran currently lacks the ability to produce uranium hexafluoride, does it possess sufficient quantities of the gaseous form and enriched uranium to construct weapons? The unequivocal answer is a resounding yes, 100%. The International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA, was aware of 18,000 centrifuges at Fordow and Natanz. However, it remains unknown whether Iran operates additional centrifuges elsewhere. Even assuming no other active centrifuges, Iran possesses 408 kilograms of enriched uranium. According to a detailed report by the New York Times, the IAEA last observed this material in a deep tunnel in Isfahan a week prior to the Israeli attack. It was stored in specialized small containers, easily transportable by 10 cars or trucks. Since then, only Iran knows the whereabouts of this enriched uranium. It is highly plausible that this material was transferred to the Bushehr nuclear plant, where Russian personnel are currently working. Notably, President Putin has publicly declared that his experts will remain in Iran even during wartime, implicitly warning America and Israel against targeting their engineers. Alternatively, the enriched uranium might still reside within the Isfahan tunnel. This is because the Isfahan plant was not struck by the GBU-57 bunker busters, which are deployed by US B-2 fighter jets. Those were directed at Fordow and Natanz. The bunkers in Isfahan, where the IAEA last reported seeing the enriched uranium casks, are more likely to be secure due to their deeper subterranean location. Furthermore, some quantity of enriched uranium must also be present at the Fordow nuclear plant, as it had not been inspected for over a year. Therefore, even if Fordow were entirely destroyed, common sense dictates that the Iranian government would have been unwise not to relocate essential components weeks before the US and Israeli assaults. While entire centrifuge cascades rows of centrifuges cannot be easily moved, their products certainly can. And it is highly probable they were, given that journalists worldwide were aware of impending American and Israeli strikes on Iranian nuclear sites. It's inconceivable that Iran, being strategically astute, would not have been the first to know and act. Both the IAEA and European intelligence agencies corroborate that Iran had already dispersed key nuclear materials. Thus, to reiterate the third point, Iran possesses centrifuges, gaseous uranium hexafluoride, and enriched uranium in quantities sufficient to develop the remaining components for a nuclear weapon. The fourth crucial step involves more than simply placing uranium on a missile and launching it. It necessitates at least two additional, highly critical stages. First, a highly sensitive detonator system must be developed for a controlled explosion. Second, a related neutron generator needs to be designed. This is because a controlled fusion reaction must be initiated, which then triggers a chain reaction within the enriched uranium atoms surrounding it, leading to a nuclear explosion. According to the Iron Notch website, a facility near the village of Sanjarian in northern Iran was engaged in work on shockwave generators and other components related to nuclear weapons. Israeli and American media claim this site has also been targeted and destroyed. It's important to note that this was a confidential site, not under IAEA supervision. The question then arises, was this facility still active when the US attacked? And if so, has its destruction prevented Iran from developing detonators? This remains uncertain, as the actual work could be proceeding underground or at other undisclosed locations. Iran possesses dozens of sites masquerading as electric companies that the IAEA has sought to inspect and audit, but has been denied. This implies a 50-50 probability regarding Iran's capability to construct a nuclear detonation system. If the Sanjarian facility was solely above ground, then it might be destroyed. However, if it was subterranean or spread across multiple locations, its safety is 100% assured. Finally, the fifth point addresses the means of delivering nuclear weapons, which require long-range ballistic and hypersonic missiles or fighter jets. This is a capability that Iran has fully established, at least concerning missiles. It maintains significant stockpiles, possesses manufacturing capabilities, and even operates a system for supplying these missiles to its allies in Yemen. It's also plausible that Russia has provided additional stockpiles via the Caspian Sea, a logical extension of Allied support. In conclusion, following the 12-day conflict, Iran's defenses have sustained damage, and its industry for processing natural uranium into hexafluoride yellowcake has reportedly been destroyed. Additionally, the laboratory for developing detonation systems appears to be compromised. However, Iran still retains its scientists, possesses enriched uranium, and has a government with the unwavering determination and compelling need to complete its nuclear project. To thwart this, Israel and the US will be compelled to launch repeated assaults and, ultimately, engage in ground operations to completely dismantle Iranian facilities. Without such decisive action, the program will not be rolled back. Both America and Israel harbor a strong intent to achieve this, and their pronouncements attest to this resolve. Two recent declarations stand out. Firstly, Israeli Defense Minister Katz has stated that the Israeli-occupied forces have been instructed to devise an enforcement plan against Iran, aimed at maintaining Israel's air superiority, preventing the advancement of Iran's nuclear program, halting missile production, and incapacitating Iran from assisting what Israel terms terrorist groups. This declaration signifies Israel's intention to apply the Lebanese model to Iran. Whether this is achievable remains to be seen. According to the Israeli minister, Israel will not be bound by any ceasefire and will continue to attack Iranian nuclear activities whenever it deems necessary, opting for direct airstrikes rather than covert operations as before. This confident Israeli enforcement plan is unequivocally a permanent declaration of war. Should this plan succeed, the Ayatollah's government in Iran would cease to exist. Conversely, if Israel fails to execute this plan, a perpetual war of attrition will ensue, a conflict requiring Israel to consistently violate Syrian and Iraqi airspace, and demanding continuous aerial refueling support from American and British fuel tankers, in addition to monthly billions in aid for Israel. Furthermore, Jordan would be constantly engaged in intercepting Iranian missiles. This would, therefore, be an exceedingly difficult war for both Israel and Iran. The Iranian foreign minister has also responded to this Israeli threat, stating that if the IAF Israeli Air Force breaches the ceasefire, Iran will respond decisively. Regardless of any ceasefire agreement, concurrently U.S. President Donald Trump has reiterated that if Iran attempts to resume nuclear activities, America will unequivocally launch an attack. We believe this is merely a threat, and there is no imminent likelihood of such an action. America will not make this mistake so soon. The reason for this is not technical, but strategic. Before attacking Iran, America must first ensure that Iran has lost the capacity to strike its 8 permanent and a total of 19 military bases in the Gulf with missiles. By previously attacking Al Udeid in Qatar, the largest American military base, Iran made a symbolic show of force. This symbolic projection could become a reality in any subsequent attack, transforming from choreography to actual kinetic action. Through this staged attack, Iran has signaled a shift in the rules of engagement, indicating its willingness to strike U.S. bases located in neighboring and allied Gulf Arab states. In this evolving scenario, the threat is no longer confined to rhetoric. Therefore, future missile launches could be real and unannounced. So, friends, in the face of these dual threats from Israelis and Americans, the Iranian Ayatollah government finds itself compelled to safeguard its existence, alleviate economic sanctions through nuclear dialogue, and covertly sustain its nuclear program. Can Ayatollah Khomeini's Iran navigate this precarious tightrope? My curious fellows, Iran cannot undertake these 3 critical steps without the technical, diplomatic, and tacit military backing of Russia and China. If, in the coming period, we observe Iran successfully developing its assets, effectively evading or robustly responding to Israeli attacks, and managing to preserve some dignity in nuclear negotiations, then it becomes clear that despite the considerable losses incurred during this 12-day conflict, Iran enjoys the full support of 2 major global powers in this multipolar world. Regarding the economic impact, this brief war has inflicted significant financial damage on Iran, already burdened by years of restrictions. However, according to TRT Global, those 2 weeks of conflict alone resulted in losses estimated between $24 billion and $35 billion, which equates to 6 to 9% of its total GDP. This calculation encompasses direct attacks, counterattacks, and all destruction within Iran due to Israeli actions. In comparison, Israel's losses, calculated differently, were slightly less, amounting to approximately $725 million per day, solely in the realm of missile firing and defense. Israel's total losses during the 12-day war ranged from $11 billion to $18 billion, representing 2 to 3% of its GDP. Friends, it is crucial to note that this figure does not include the damage caused by Iranian missiles striking Israeli cities. This exclusion is due to Israel's wartime policy of banning photos and videos of military asset destruction. Israeli police actively sought out individuals publicizing scenes of destruction within Israel, choosing to only showcase attacks on public buildings. In essence, they were engaging in the very behavior they attributed to Hamas. Consequently, this destruction was not factored into the $17 to $18 billion estimate. Furthermore, comrades, America's losses from just a few hours of Operation Midnight Hammer amounted to between $1 and $2 billion. This sum is a mere speck compared to America's staggering $28 trillion economy, representing a negligible 0.0071%. Finally, the question arises, has the Iran-Israel conflict reached a prolonged halt? Not at all. This represents merely a brief intermission between Iran and Israel, with many more rounds of confrontation yet to unfold. The outcome of this struggle remains undecided. Both sides have made temporary concessions to gain time. The duration of these compromises is uncertain, but their permanence is highly improbable. The fundamental cause of this entire conflict remains Israel's occupation of Palestine and the ongoing active genocide in Gaza. Israel and the U.S. appear keen to perpetuate the Gaza genocide under the guise of Iranian conflict, ultimately aiming to depopulate Gaza and construct Trump Towers and a Riviera there. In 1937, David Ben-Gurion, who would later become Israel's first prime minister, penned a letter to his son advocating for the expulsion of Palestinians from their lands to the greatest extent possible. This letter is substantiated by documentary evidence, including an English translation and his original handwriting. While not definitively proven by returning evidence, a statement is also attributed to Ben-Gurion, suggesting that Palestinians expelled from their homeland would become refugees in foreign countries, eventually dying of old age, and their descendants would forget their origins and their right to return to Palestine. This implies that it serves Israel's interest to temporarily stigmatize Palestinians by expelling them, believing that over time, everything would normalize, at least by the next generation, and Palestinians would relinquish their international right of return. Their dream was that the old would die and the children would forget. While there's no explicit proof for this particular statement, its practical manifestation is evident. Ben-Gurion's letter to his son and current Israeli policy clearly demonstrate a refusal to grant the right of return to the 0.75 million Palestinians displaced by the Nakba, despite its explicit mention in UN resolutions. Israeli policy is to deny them this right, with the underlying belief that eventually the older Palestinians will perish, and the younger generations will forget. Israelis' desire either for Palestinians to acknowledge their settler colony or to vacate their land and settle elsewhere. Both scenarios are now deemed impossible. Zionists contend that they haven't forgotten a religious history spanning 3,000 years. Therefore, how could Palestinians forget a documented history of merely 70 years ago? Friends, the roots of anti-American sentiment in Iran run deep. Many of you might wonder about the prevalence of slogans like "Death to America" in Iran. While I have often stated my view that this slogan is ill-advised and foolish, it possesses a significant historical context. Its origins trace back to the 1950s, specifically to the overthrow of Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh's democratically elected government with American assistance. This intervention led to the installation of the Shah as a puppet ruler, primarily to secure control over Iranian oil, which the United States subsequently achieved.